Welcome to another RPGaDAY video, and this is question 13. What makes a successful campaign? Well, in my opinion, there are a few things that make a successful campaign. First of all is the amount of time that the GM is willing to devote to a campaign. Because don't get me wrong, campaigns are amazing things to run. They're very entertaining. There's nothing quite like the feeling of a campaign when it goes really well, when you get that big payoff for it. However, it does take an awful lot of effort to run, and that's not just if you're one of these GMs who likes to plan everything out to the nth degree. Even if you're going to run a sort of a mainly improv sort of style of game, it still takes effort. Someone has to have the rules, someone has to know them at least, someone has to get the players together, organise the times people are meeting up, provide that jumping off point for the rest of the group to run with. Now, anyone who's seen my videos will know I'm a big fan of collaboratively creating a campaign, which is basically the GM spreading some of the workload about to ensure that he's not overwhelmed by it. But not only that, it means that the players have a chance to invest some of their own ideas and get involved with actually planning out the campaign, rather than it just being the GM sort of handing everything down to them. But even with that, the GM still has to do a fair amount of work in a campaign. After all, when the players want to know when the next session is, they look at the GM. When they've finished role-playing their character, or they want to know a detail about the world, they look to the GM to provide guidance. And it's a lot easier to do that, in my opinion, if the GM has planned that out. Now, there are some GMs who are amazing at improvisation. They seem to be able to run a game at a drop of a hat and just run with it, and that's great. But even so, it's not that they don't put effort in, because they do. All GMs put effort in. It's just they shift the balance of the effort to taking place in the session, because they have to come up with things on the fly, rather than the pre-prep GM, who does most of his effort beforehand, so can take it a little bit easier during the session. Although, obviously, you still have to put in the hours when it comes to actually running the session. You still have to make it entertaining and make it fun for your players. So that's one of the things I think makes a successful campaign, the effort the GM puts in. However, there also has to be a commensurate amount of effort and investment put in by the players. Now, if you've got players who are eager to turn up to your sessions, always play the arse off their characters and play it to the hilt during a session, give you some good feedback and help the session develop and grow and throw some ideas into that melting pot themselves, it's very different than if you have lackluster players who miss sessions, contact you late and say they can't make sessions, which happens to everybody, but you know, it's not difficult to pick up a phone or send a Facebook message nowadays. So lackluster players can make the goal of the GM a lot more difficult and a lot more frustrating, and can ultimately contribute to the downfall of a campaign in just as easily as a lackluster or uninspired GM can do. It's really that fusion of effort by the GM on one hand and effort by the players on the other hand coming together that I feel makes a successful campaign. And of course there is other stuff that you have to make a campaign successful. An interesting concept, a system you all like or that you're willing to try, some good characters that everyone wants to play, a group that can work together, etc. There's loads of videos out there that will list all of these things. I've done a few of them myself. But unless you have those two key foundations of a GM and a group of players who are willing to come together, invest time in the game, invest effort into making it entertaining for themselves and each other, you really won't get very far. So, my answer to question 13, what makes a successful campaign, is there's lots of things that make a successful campaign, but the basic foundations, the bedrock of a successful campaign, if you will, in my opinion, are players and GMs all being willing to put effort and time aside to devote and invest in that campaign. So hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow for question 14. Take care.